Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Tell everybody that it's Thursday. We're, 11 days in front of the election. And no surprise, we're on October. And boy, are we drowning in October surprise dumps yesterday. They threw the kitchen sink out yesterday, didn't they, Mercy?
Well, that's exactly right. I was telling them, get ready for the desperation of the left. And that being, of course, what's the latest now, Larry? Trump is Hitler?
Well, that's the funny thing.
100 times.
That's the funny thing. No matter what they try and no matter how often they try it, they still come back to the final arguments here, which is Trump groped a pretty young model, 30 years ago, and Trump is Hitler. And it's the same argument they made 8 years ago. It's the same argument they made 4 years ago. It's just relentless. But it's hard to look at the news cycle and look at all these things they throw at you and not feel discouraged. And I want to talk to you about that. Well, first, let's get into a little bit of the detail. I mean, we always lead with news. Here's Kamala Harris yesterday standing at a podium with the seal of the vice president's office on the podium, and she's standing in front of the door of the official residence of the vice president of the United States. Love to know how this hits the Hatch Act violations, but here she was yesterday in D.C.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him.
From that point forward, the entire narrative from the Kamala Harris camp and from Kamala Harris herself when she went on CNN with Anderson Cooper is Trump is Hitler, Trump is a fascist, he will take over, and he wants the military loyal to him. This is a man who's just endured 2 assassination attempts, one of them with a bullet grazing his ear, leaving his face blood-stroked and coming millimeters away from fracturing his skull. And this kind of campaign rhetoric from the campaign of Joy and Brat Summer is almost begging for another act of violence against Donald Trump or members of his family or his campaign. And I am literally left speechless sometimes when I see this kind of dangerous audacity from the people who are supposed to be there. This is a day after Barack Obama was lamenting, how did we get so divided in this country? Mercedes, how are we supposed to deal with this kind of news cycle? How does Donald Trump deal with this kind of thing?
You got to ignore it. We're at a point right now that I even think the voters are ignoring it. They've heard everything, okay? They've heard everything about Donald Trump. This is not new. We have heard these comments before. This is not the first time that they tried to talk about this. But it was so interesting because about 2 days ago, I was on the Right Squad with Jason Nichols, who's the Democrat, usually the Democrat panelist.
Yeah.
And Jason previewed these talking points because he started talking about Hitler. And I remember it caught me. It was 3 days ago. Not that it caught me off guard, but I literally just responded in such a way where I said to him, I was like, are you inferring that Donald Trump is like Hitler? I remember, and I go after him because I was like, this is just so typical of the left, where they're like, they're doing everything they can to bring back this whole narrative that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, that he is Hitler. It is exactly where because they have nothing to run on. They cannot run on policy because Kamala Harris can't even explain her economic vision for America. She can't even explain how she's going to make America more secure. And so what are they going to do? They're going to try to demonize Donald Trump. It is a desperate act in these final weeks of the campaign.
And the thing that gives this credibility, or not credibility, but it gives it another push into the news cycle.
Yeah, it brings life to it. Yeah.
I remember a story 3 years ago, I think it was, that claimed that Trump had said, I wish my generals were like Hitler's generals. I remember that story. It was out like 3 years ago they tried to throw this out there. The difference is, or what is giving it new life and breathing new life into it is General John Kelly, who had been the chief of staff to the president. And of course, obviously, something went sour in their relationship because he has said many negative things about the president. Sean Spicer, who knows the players involved here, and I know you do too, Mercedes. I want Sean to start here, but then I want to hear your firsthand account because you know General John Kelly, you know President Trump, you were in the room as well. Here was Sean yesterday on Megyn Kelly's show, and Megyn Kelly said, what happened here? Why does John Kelly say something like this? And if this is true, why does John Kelly wait until 2 weeks before the election to put this out there? This entire time he's known this, and then he just it doesn't make sense. So here was Sean's explanation.
It's an interesting question. I think there are some unique circumstances regarding some of these cases, why certain individuals, they were fired. In some cases, their advice wasn't taken. They were undermined by somebody else. You know, the one thing, and we talked about this in the morning meeting that I think is fascinating, there were several instances during my tenure where there'd be a story, whether it's Politico or the New York Times or what have you, where they'd say, in a meeting that occurred, this and this happened. And the four people in the meeting all agreed that never happened, that never was discussed. I'm not trying to impugn General Kelly's integrity or his comments, but I'm just saying that I always find it fascinating the stories that occurred during my tenure that never occurred, that had five sources, none of which were in the room, that got printed.
Well, let me just add something on that, but then I want to redirect you to my question. I want to add something on that. One of General Kelly's objections, as I read the New York Times piece in particular, one of his comments was he's very disturbed. The reason he came out and spoke on camera and on audio is he's most disturbed that Trump is talking about unleashing the military on the American people. And that is not what Trump said. What Trump said was that we have a great enemy within. People like Adam Schiff, who he thinks are undermining democracy and who's an enemy of Trump's. And he said, when asked by Maria Bartiromo about Joe Biden's prediction that there could be chaos on Election Day by Trump voters, Trump responded, no, there won't be, not by Trump voters. And she said, well, what would you do if there were, rioting on Election Day? That's what she's asking him. And he's saying, I'm not going to allow that. I would unleash the National Guard and, if necessary, the military. It's the Tom Cotton piece in response to the BLM riots.
Yeah. And that's a very important fact check, and that never gets fact checked either. And then Sean goes on a little bit more about John Kelly. I want to hear that, and I want to hear your reflections as well. Most importantly, Mercedes, because it's a great day to have you, since you know all these players involved. And I think you can help us. You can help all of us sort of deal with this news cycle and understand exactly.
I can help you all with psychological problems too at this point. Okay, there's so much I can help you with.
She has been to the mountaintop and she has seen the promised land.
I've seen it all.
5:15 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the
WMAL. Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had.
All right. So, and again, the first words out of her mouth, General John Kelly. Now, he was chief of staff of the White House. He was your chief of staff. You technically worked for him.
He hired me. Yeah, he hired me.
What's going on here?
Look, I think I want to start off first with an ex post from Nick Ayers, who was he has stayed pretty much out of politics for quite some time.
I saw this morning. This is actually very
he was Pence's chief of staff, and his ex. We were there at the same time, and Nick Ayers said, "I've avoided commenting on intra-staff leaks or rumors, or even lies, as it relates to my time at the White House. But General Kelly's comments regarding President Trump are too egregious to ignore. I was with each of them more than most, and his commentary is patently false." Now, that is, to me, that encompasses what we saw as well. Okay, we were in the Oval Office. Now, General Kelly was in the Oval Office more than most, I would say. But the reality is, we never heard President Trump make comments like that. Number one, on Hitler. Number two, General Kelly. What I found very disturbing is that it went from he was there to serve the president, right? Providing, being an advisor, to all of a sudden saying that he John Kelly should be making these decisions, the most serious decisions in the White House. Basically saying that he didn't necessarily trust the president's judgment. And so I remember at one point I'm sitting with General Kelly and we would call him the chief. And I said, Chief, if he goes, I hate President Trump. And I was like, well, if you hate President Trump, then you shouldn't be working for President Trump. If you cannot serve serve the president as an advisor, as truly someone who is there to serve the president, to serve the American people, then go. If you don't get along with him, if you don't agree with the decisions he's making, then go.
So
because
while you were both working in the White
he
House,
wanted to be the one being the ultimate decision maker. And guess what, buddy? You're not the one that was elected. End of story.
He was chief of staff of the White House. He was working for President Trump, running the staff and operations of the White House. You were working on the staff of the White House, and in a meeting together with him, he said, "I hate President Trump."
Yeah, John Kelly had this grew to hate President Trump, and I think it's because they have very different styles of management. President Trump is kind of is a very big thinker. He's very big. He would talk about the building the wall, and he would bring in all these different folks from the Corps of Engineers and the Department of Homeland Security. He'd be like, wouldn't it be great if we could build a moat? And then he'd be like, he just gets into this really kind of these more just elaborate type of answers. And of course the generals are like, what is they would be like, what do you mean build a moat? And it's like, no, he's saying that kind of to be like, think big. What can we do? How do we get it to the point that, you're going to build, build the structure of the wall? But he would always start off with something that would be a little bit kind of catch their attention. And then afterwards, of course, then you go into the specifics and they would explain things and he would have questions. And it was a great back and forth. But for General Kelly, it was the fact that General Kelly could not control President Trump, right? And I think that their personalities, almost like two very type A men, they would clash. And it got to the point that I think that Kelly then said, well, Trump shouldn't be making decisions. Because I am a general, should be making these decisions. And so I was speaking to a general yesterday, last night, and we were having this discussion. And he told me, he goes, sometimes some of these military guys, it gets in their head that because they're generals, that they're the ones that should be making the decisions, not necessarily the civilian, leaders.
Yeah, they're not.
And that's the big
right.
Yeah.
But so then the follow-up question would be, General Kelly has enjoyed this sort of pristine reputation and this reputation of being a man of integrity for many years, despite various moments since the Trump White House. And by the way, there's a great tweet of Kamala Harris basically accusing General Kelly of being a duplicitous war criminal and profiteering from his time in the White House. That's it's amazing now that Kamala Harris is embracing him as the paragon of virtue.
I'm going to be
of course.
I hate it. I hate criticizing him. But I do know that there's a personal...
So the question is, why would he risk that integrity now? If this story is false, and because the only bottom line is either General Kelly is lying or he's telling the truth. And many, like you just said, many people who worked with both of them have said this story is not true. So why would General Kelly, 2 weeks before the election, risk that reputation with this story now?
Well, I think Look, General Kelly, I believe probably by now is retired. He's probably on some boards. He has nothing. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the sense that he's not going to obviously go back and work in a Trump administration. Obviously he's made. Now, my understanding is that it was through a source. He did make these comments to the New York Times a while back ago. This has resurfaced again. I think he made some comments.
He was in a podcast. He was on a podcast and he basically confirmed it.
And then he basically mentioned that he believes that Donald Trump would be a dictator, that he would be viewed as a fascist. Yeah. This is the new terms they're using now is not only Hitler, but that now Donald Trump would be a fascist. Which, as we know, for fascists, it's that the government pretty much will control nationally the economy, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But
which is literally what Kamala Harris's plan is.
Exactly.
By the way.
Exactly. So. Like, I feel for General Kelly. Look, he has complete hatred for Donald Trump. It is like Liz Cheney, the complete hatred for Donald Trump. But for him to basically say that Donald Trump would be a dictator, look, Donald Trump spent more time on the phone trying to figure out with Mitch McConnell and at the time Paul Ryan, how do we solve these major problems? He even tried with Nancy Pelosi to deal with the infrastructure bill. He tried. He would work the phones all the time trying to get legislation through the process, and and it just was a challenge.
Right.
It was definitely a challenge for him.
It's a great point. It's like if he has a tendency to be a fascist and a dictator, well, he certainly was a pretty lousy one the first 4 years he was president, because God knows. Yeah. All right. We've got more on this. We are lucky enough all morning long to have Mercedes Schlapp. This is obviously a dominant news story. There's other news stories as well, as the Democrats in desperation are throwing whatever they can to Donald Trump. And we're going to try to, drink out of this fire hose and sort it all out for you. So stick with us. It's 5:25.
Making sense of your world.
I listen to you all the time.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
It drives me crazy because you're right.
Making sense of the news now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
5:37, and it's go time here. If you haven't gotten involved, it's time to get involved now. And early voting has begun in Maryland. Well, will begin in Maryland in the next hour and a half. Coming up at 6:35, Brenda Diaz running for Montgomery County Board of Education. 7:05, Hans von Spakovsky is going to give us a look-see on all the early voting numbers we've gotten so far. 7:15, Nicole Harris, chair of the Republican Party in Maryland. 7:35, Representative Mike Waltz will join us. Get him to chime in on John Kelly and the discussion about the military. 8:05, Neil Parrott running for Congress in Maryland 6. And then at 8:35, the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. That's a loaded slate. And thank goodness we have Mercedes Schlapp here, who was in the room during the Trump administration and the Trump campaign. And now you were just down in Miami for the Latinos for Trump. Although, isn't it supposed to be Latinx for Trump? Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's why the Democrats keep losing support from the Latino community, because the Latinx are the only ones voting for them, and that's like less than 2% that even like that name. But yeah, let's just destroy the Spanish language in the meantime. That sounds great.
They did seem to drop that quickly. Yeah. So Kamala's all in on the Hitler fascist thing. She gives this address. But I just glancing below there on the Hatch Act, but the vice president's official residence standing out there with the flag behind her and the seal and giving this, and it looked like an official government pronouncement. You know the Hatch Act.
We were trying. I was racking my brain yesterday because we had this conversation on the Right Squad last night. We were just having this discussion, but I do believe the president, the vice president, they are under other rules
because that's their residence as well.
Yeah, right? So I think that it was okay. I just think that, look, I'm looking at the Harris campaign, and I keep wondering to myself, like, who are the people? I mean, we know it's that Julie Chavez Rodriguez, but these people giving her advice. I mean, it's been one bad news cycle after one bad news cycle for Kamala Harris. I mean, she cannot get herself moving again. I mean, you look at the CNN town hall, the Telemundo interview just this week. I mean, you would think after the Brett Baer interview debacle, she would have been, Larry, like, okay, maybe I'll stay away from interviews and just go, I don't know, hug babies, or, oh no, she supports killing the babies. But right. I was saying, like, figure out a way to, I don't know.
But no, I think you're onto something.
There's momentum behind her, but these really framing interviews don't work.
They've had such a bad cycle here. We're just relentlessly bad one after another, while the polls for Trump are surging. If you look at the trend lines in these polling graphs, and so it does seem like it's like, all right, let's throw this Hail Mary then. We got to do something to stop the hemorrhaging, and we've got to do something to reverse this. And that's what it seemed like when she did this, embracing the Hitler thing, which again is the same narrative they've had about her. There's nothing new here. Whose mind has changed here about who they're going to vote for, and whether you're just like, okay, that's it, I'm not going to vote for Trump now. I was gonna, but now I won't, based on this new information, because literally there is nothing new about it. We've heard it before, which makes me wonder, is there something else at play here? Are they trying to convince voters? No. So what are they trying to do? I think they're trying to build a narrative as to why they need to hang on to power and keep Donald Trump out of office, even if he does win the Electoral College.
So
or maybe
I
this
think-
is to tamper with the Electoral College
No,
between
look,
Election Day and January 6th.
This is, wow, that's interesting. Look, I think that we have to understand. I know you made me think. Look, I think we have to understand that for Joe Biden, right? When Joe Biden was up for re-election, when the Democrats kind of liked him, now they want to kind of lock him up in a basement.
Back up until middle July,
things. But, think about it. There's a stream of consciousness happening here when Joe Biden the other day in New Hampshire made these comments where they're like, yeah, we should lock up President Trump. He should be in jail. Those words, he was literally, it was stream of conscious. He was just saying exactly what he thought.
Right.
And I do think that is where the Democrats' minds are at. We have to understand what we're dealing with. They are trying to push this narrative of Trump is a threat to democracy. They're trying to bring that back because nothing else is working. They cannot run on economic success. They cannot run on the fact that they're controlling the border. They cannot run the Democrats on the fact that, we have a world filled with peace. That's not happening. So there's so much, their policies, their quote unquote accomplishments on the left, those Democrats, they have nothing to show except failure. So where do you go? You have to go into this identity politics. Trump's a sexist, a rapist. And then of course you're always like, oh yeah. And then the Hitler card, you know what I mean? Like, this is what they do. This is like,
but it's a
their
far
playbook.
cry from all the joy. I'm old enough to remember all the joy. Remember Oprah? Oh, we haven't felt this kind of joy in a campaign. Feel the joy.
Yeah.
And now they're right back to the hatred. And by the way, they're playing from another playbook here. The Guardian over in the UK.
Oh yeah,
came
that's
out
a
with
new one
story.
too.
Yeah, this one now, apparently there is a woman who this is literally 30 years ago.
Right.
When she was a model, she claims that Donald Trump groped her while Jeffrey Epstein was in the room, too. They threw Epstein in here. Now, I'd love to get an interview with him, but I don't think that he's going to be able to verify this. And she claims she was groped by Donald Trump. She hasn't said anything about it. When Donald Trump was a major television star, she didn't say anything about it. When he first ran for office and was president of the United States, she said nothing about it. When she ran for re-election, she didn't say anything about it. She waited until 12 days before Election Day to say something about it. But here's what's really interesting. The author of the article at The Guardian is named Lucy Osborne. She's the one who broke this story yesterday. If you go back to September of 2020, just a month before, to 8 weeks before the election in 2020, Lucy Osborne in The Guardian had a story about a young woman who alleged that Donald Trump sexually assaulted her decades before. So it's the same writer, the same publication, and the same kind of allegation against Donald Trump. And so again, Mercedes, how are we supposed to be expected to believe any of this?
Yeah, we're back to the groping, I think, and the thing is that if they would have Democrats would have like a half charismatic candidate, it could maybe work, but it's not going to work when Kamala Harris is on, goes on CNN town hall, and even Anderson Cooper's like, well, wait a second, you guys have been in power for 4 years. What do what do you mean? Like, you're going to separate yourself from Joe Biden, type of thing now. Like, we know that you guys have been in office and it's not working. And the American people, everyone I've talked to has been like, especially in the minority community, people are hurting. Like, people are hurting. They cannot afford to groceries. They cannot afford to pay their bills. This is critical.
And all they're doing is sliming Donald Trump, and they are not talking about what people need. Mercedes, hold that thought. I want to talk about a little bit more of this, and most importantly, because you've seen Donald Trump have to deal with this kind of thing. I want you to tell us how he deals with it, how he endures this kind of attack, because he doesn't seem fatigued by any of it. We'll get to that in just a moment.
Weeknights with Mark Levin, 6 to 9 p.m.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
And it's Larry O'Connor with Mercedes Schlapp here on O'Connor and Company. And Mercedes, again, yesterday was an absolutely overwhelming and exhausting day for anybody following the political news cycle, where the Democrats and the Kamala Harris campaign and the media, their partners in the propaganda media press, are just throwing everything they can at Donald Trump and Trump voters and Trump supporters. And part of the relentless sort of machine gun, spraying the room with as many bullets as possible sort of approach here is to make Trump supporters and Trump voters depressed, fatigued, hopeless. That this is part of their get out the vote campaign. It's to try to squelch the vote of Trump supporters. It's trying to keep you from going out and being motivated because you guys have been riding high for the last couple of days. And I dare I say, I think it works sometimes. It does make people feel exhausted and fatigued. And it's like, can't we just get past this and move on? Turn the page, right? That's what they want people to think. So how do you deal with this? And how does Donald Trump deal with this? You've seen Donald Trump in the middle of the Russian collusion dealing with all of this.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think obviously you and I consume news all the time. So I think it's exhausting for us that have to do this a little sometimes for a living. We're very grateful to be able to do what we do. But at the same time, you just see this and you're going, what's so disturbing is that once the news article pops, so it's like the Atlantic story is a perfect example where there was this source and Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor, he's been out, or the writer has been out there, basically saying, yes, this is a true story that President Trump made this horrific comment about this woman who died, Vanessa Guillen, who was basically, and President Trump paid for the funeral, but then he made some sort of comment, which again, it's exhausting because it's always the anonymous source. It's always maybe someone said that, or this is something that, could have happened 2 years ago or 4 years ago. So you get exhausted because the media, once the story pops, what happens? It goes viral. People start sharing it. They start commenting on it. And then before you know it, it's all over the place. And then before you know it, my friends who don't follow politics as closely as I do, they text me and they're like, is this true? That's always what you hear.
Same
and
here.
Then you're like,
I
guys,
get the text from my friends too.
Yeah, and you're kind of like, guys, you have to stop believing this BS. Like you have to understand that this is part of their playbook 2 weeks before an election. So I feel that that for us it is exhausting, but I will say, as I've traveled, so I was at that Latino summit with President Trump, and really I love being with the grassroots. It's like my favorite place. I just love it. Love it, love it. They are focused. There is definitely a sense of, I would say, almost like this desperation to win on the side of Donald Trump. They're like, we are not going to let what happened in 2020 happen again. There has to be, every person that they can get out to vote, they get out to vote. Everything at the end of the day, I do have to say, and this is the only thing that makes me a little nervous, is that Republicans are really good. One of my friends told me this. She goes, Republicans are great at campaigning, but they suck when it comes to election, because you got to turn out the vote. And that it is critical, that kind of politically oiled machine, to be able to go out there. And the Democrats, that's where they spend their money. And they're always very, very quiet about it. So it looks promising right now, because in these early voting states, in Nevada, in Florida, in North Carolina, it seems that it is going in the direction of the Republicans. That is what it seems like. And so I am cautiously optimistic, but still, that means that all of us have a responsibility to go to our nice neighbor, not our bad neighbor, but our nice neighbor, and be like, hey, we got to remember to vote early,
Go vote,
get out early,
bring
don't
10
wait
friends.
till election
Bring
day.
10 friends,
Yeah.
So, and real fast, just to button it up, because I think one of the, having witnessed the first Trump administration from the outside, but close on the sidelines, front row seats certainly. One of the things that I think kept people sort of pushing through the relentless news cycle of Russian collusion and all those hoaxes and all of the so-called scandals that weren't, was the fact that it never seemed to bother Trump. I mean, it bothered him, but he was energized by it. He never felt defeated. He never quit, and it's always been so easy.
Can I tell you, Larry? It did bother him. I think it did bother him. I think he was so appalled by the hatred of so many in the media that all they did all the time was to spew these lies based on anonymous sources, mostly from individuals who absolutely hated Donald Trump. Yeah. And so for him, just think about it. It's like when you look at Michael Cohen and like the fall of Michael Cohen, where they were good friends. He was his lawyer, and then all of a sudden Michael Cohen turns on the president so viciously. And you get to the point that you're like, the president's like, who do I trust? You can't trust anybody because they're going to turn on you.
But he never gives up. But he never lets it get him down. He doesn't give up, and he keeps coming back for more.
Yeah, he does. He will not give up, and he has thick skin, and he will fight and push back. And that is something that I think he has taught. I mean, he's taught us that. Like, when in tough moments in our lives, he's told us, he's like, you don't give up. You keep moving forward and fighting. And I think that's you just don't let the other side win. And I think that that's a really good lesson for all of us, I think, in life.
Don't let them win. Don't let them win.
Don't let them win.
Don't let them win.
Don't let them win.
And winning for them right now.
If they try to tear you down, you pick yourself up again. I mean, it's a great life lesson.
Yeah. And they never picked you up in the first place. You have to pick yourself up. And those that you really do trust and love, your family. And that is it. Don't let them win is a great sort of mantra. Every day, wake up when you see this coming, when you see them coming after you, when they see them coming after, and they are coming after you. This isn't about attacking Trump. This is about attacking you. This is about attacking you for supporting Trump. This is about attacking you for actually not doing what they demand that you do, which is to vote for Kamala Harris. And all you've got to do is keep repeating yourself, don't let them win, don't let them win. And winning for them right now, a win for them is for you to be depressed, for you to be hopeless, for you to just stay home. Don't let them win. It's 5:54.